Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for being here this morning to talk about a very important issue, probably one of the critical issues to our region, and that's around attainable housing and all the challenges that presents. So thank you for your time this morning. I'm Bob Seidler. I'm the co-chair of the Convention and Visitors Bureau Workforce Development Task Force, and we represent our member organizations in the hospitality industry. Melanie?
Melanie Stiff. I'm the Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Roper St. Francis Healthcare, and it's my pleasure to be here today. Thank
Glad
you.
to have you. Anton?
All right, thank you. I'm Anton Gunn, Chief Diversity Officer and Director of Community Health Innovation at MUSC Health System.
Great, thanks. Emily?
Emily Reynolds, Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer with Heritage Trust Federal Credit Union.
Terrific. Thanks for being here. Well, let me tell you a little bit my role in this. Well, I've been asked to be the moderator. I also have a dog in this fight, you might say. I'm a co-chair of a task force that the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Explore Charleston, has put together. And we are doing workforce development. Of course, part of that is, like you said, is recruiting and retaining, and housing is part of that as well. And so for our members, our hospitality members, hotels, restaurants, attractions, things like that, we're facing the same issues that all of you are, is that as we grow, and we all know that Charleston is a growing and dynamic tourism and hospitality market, we're all facing the same challenges in retaining. And we've had these conversations before that hospital recruitment and hospitality recruitment are really not too much different. Okay, great. I wanted to set there's a couple of kind of foundational issues I wanted to talk about, or just make sure that these are out there before we kind of talk about our individual thoughts. Region-wide, it's been encouraging that wage growth is evident. Since statistics show that since 2010, area-wide, we've had a 12% increase in wages. Also, over that same period, home prices and rents are up 27 and I think it was 49% respectively. So clearly the dynamic is, it's encouraging that we have wage growth, but housing growth has outpaced that. And then there's a really surprising statistic that said that the research said that over this area that the average resident is spending 57% of their income on housing and transportation. And I think we would all agree that's probably not sustainable. And we all know that 30% is really kind of a threshold for housing, be it rental or ownership. So that's an alarming statistic. And so as a result, housing costs, the increase in housing costs are outpacing the wage growth. And as a result, the Chamber has put together an employer-led event, and of course that's why we're here today. And I think the ultimate goal for the Chamber is to kind of lead a private and public and nonprofit collaboration, working with governments and employers to help look at this problem. So that's kind of the foundation on which we're talking about today. So. Melanie, can I start out with you? You're
Sure.
an advocate for attainable housing. What does it mean to your organization? What does it mean to the Roper St. Francis Healthcare Organization?
Absolutely. Well, it's really important. Our mission is healing all people with compassion, faith, and excellence. And honestly, we can't do that without a top talent workforce. And in order to attract and retain talent, we have to make sure that we have avenues for them to afford to live and work in close proximity to one another.
Sure.
So the message that we've been hearing over the past couple of years really is, that people are having to drive too far, right? Turnover
Sure.
is increasing. And so with that in mind, there's a lot of traffic congestion as well, right? So we have to figure out ways to get people off the roads, right, to mitigate our traffic issues. We have to find ways to, hand in hand with that, provide attainable housing, because
Sure.
if people can live and work in proximity, they're going to be off the roads more, right? And they're going to have a better quality of life. We all want a better quality of life. I think that we've heard for a long time that density is a bad thing, and we've got to get comfortable with density being a positive for us,
Mhm.
right? Young professionals and millennials want to be able to walk to work.
Oh, they're fine with density.
You know,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
fine with density.
If they don't have a car, that's okay.
That's right, and we have to be able to provide opportunities for all
Mhm.
folks within an organization to live and thrive.
Sure.
And so with that in mind, we really wanted to get involved to say, how can we help? How can we lend our voice to it? And make sure that as we're coming up with solutions, we understand that as employers, we have a responsibility to come to the table and say, how can we help in this effort, and how can we lead the charge? We need to be telling our stories so that our community understands this is not just about who lives in your backyard.
Mhm.
This is about how do we live and work and play in a way that gives us a better quality of life
Great.
overall.
That's for sure. Anton, can you give any specifics of the housing? What impact has it had on your organization, the lack of attainable housing?
I can give you two particular specifics that I think would be very telling to the issue. When I first arrived here in 2015, I was meeting with some of our key leaders about the diversity in their area, that they wanted to make sure they had a diverse workforce. And I had a leader tell me that he had done a tremendous job of recruiting some top nurses to work in his particular service area. And they had come from various areas around the country, some cities like Chicago, New York, et cetera. And in many of those places, those folks were used to living near where they work. And so they didn't drive to work. They actually walked to work, or they biked to work, or maybe they caught some level of public transportation to work. Well, he attracted them down here to MUFC, and when they went to shop for housing, it was so unaffordable to live anywhere near where our campus is or where our facilities are.
Sure.
This employee only found an affordable home about 16 or 17 miles outside of the city. And having to commute an hour plus in every morning was diminishing this person's quality of life.
Sure.
So we spent time and effort attracting talent to our organization. And in less than a year, she came in and resigned and took an opportunity that was much closer to where she lived. And so we lost a talent opportunity because of the cost of housing around where our facilities are located. A second example is really just a couple weeks ago. We have been going back and forth trying to attract a physician to MUSC, a physician. And it boiled down to that where they live currently and what they pay for in housing is twice as much in Charleston.
Wow.
And so they made a decision that I can't move my family here and pay twice as much for housing. It just doesn't make sense. And so whether you're at one end of the pay scale or the other, housing is completely unaffordable, and it's keeping us from getting the top talent that we need here to take care of the patients and families that want to receive care at MUSC. And I think that speaks to just the difficulty of it all, is that people can do their own research, they can do their own math, and they know how much
Sure.
they pay in a mortgage or how much they pay in rent, and they can do the equation on, even if we pay good comparable salaries to what's in the region, that when you have housing costs double in some spaces what your wage increases are, it is not a sustainable model, and it's actually impacting us in many ways. And so it gets harder and harder for us to find a way to make this work, and that's why we have to have a unified regional solution to this issue, and every employer is invested in this or should be invested in it because they all have their own stories, and it's time for us to start sharing those stories, but more importantly, coming to some solutions of how we make housing more affordable and attainable for everyone that wants to live, work, and play in our community.
Right. Thanks. That's just some great examples. Emily, have you had any thoughts about modifying? I imagine, first of all, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I imagine you have similar stories of the difficulty in retaining or attracting talent. How much does your compensation plan play into that? I mean, do you have latitude to make those changes to attract the talent needed?
Sure, I can speak to that. I think all of us really strive to be employers of choice, all businesses in our area.
Sure.
I think we all do comp studies every year, whether that's mid-market or regional and even national. We just finished a national one for our company because we want to make sure we provide competitive pay and benefits. So I think everyone is focused on that.
Sure.
And we're always looking for that higher standard and making sure we're in line with those kinds of positions and pay, and all of those pieces are in line. I think the difficult part with that is when you do those studies and you are in line, and you're looking at even comp planning over the next 5 years, and you have that modeling, so
Mhm.
you are committed to that as an organization financially, you are making those changes, it still is a challenge in certain areas for us where maybe it's a more affluent area, so median home price is
Mhm.
500,000 or more. So that's very difficult to come up with a solution as an employer for that situation.
Mhm.
Whether we're creative on the benefit side, and maybe we provide commuter benefits or other things that we're bringing to the table
Mhm.
and becoming creative around those issues, but those factors still exist. And so when you are in 4 counties, like our company is, and many of your locations
Sure.
are, and you have that spread, and you are in those different communities, because you need to serve those different communities, it does continue to be an issue with facing those challenges of trying to create sustainable workforce in those locations. So
Mhm.
I think it's very similar, and our industries are very different, but we're still facing those same factors and those same realities.
Yeah.
But I think we are doing everything we can on the employer side to make sure we strive to be that employer of choice here, and we are competitive. It's just that those factors still remain, and
Mhm.
it's a challenge.
Well, speaking of kind of monetary compensation, I know that you've made huge investments in parking for your folks, and that whole, I'm sure that was driven largely by these situations. If people are going to be living out, at least make it easier for them to park in your facilities.
Yeah, all of these issues are intimately connected together. So our transportation infrastructure is tied to our housing needs and our housing affordability. When people can't afford to live near where they work, and they have to live 16, 17, sometimes 25, 26 miles away without adequate public transportation, the only way they
Yeah.
can get to work is a car. And that adds to the congestion on our roads, that adds to more and more of our woes of trying to get around town at times that are affordable, and that means we have to invest also in places for people to park at work.
Right.
We would love to have more green space. We would love to have more healthy spaces for people to enjoy life, but it's really difficult to do that when you got most of your workforce commuting in more than 8+ miles to get to work every day. And so that kind of context makes it difficult, and that's why we have to have a solution that is focused on how do we make our communities more dense in the places that they need to be dense. How do we build housing more affordably? How do we make sure that median home prices don't outpace wages in the market? We got to do all of these things in concert. We can't look at this issue separated from every other issue, because they're all tied in together.
I know one of the things that has seems to be bubbling up is that for the first time, certainly in the rental world, in the apartments, that is beginning to catch up, and apparently the apartment development community is recognizing that there is tremendous demand here. So I think we've all seen the statistics where area growth has outpaced housing, and I think for the first time we begin to see that gap closing a little bit. I think kind of the jury's out as to whether that's going to have an impact on housing costs, but I know some recent statistics that the Chamber has looked at indicate that gap is closing a little bit, so that is encouraging. I guess the development community has recognized that demand is here. Also, I think you've all submitted, your organizations have submitted people for this program that the Chamber is doing, the houses, or the faces of housing. And I know, to your point, we've got people who are struggling and living way outside, and how they're going to be, how they're going to find transportation and parking once they get into the core area. I know one of the things that's encouraging is the Convention and Visitors Bureau has been active and very supportive of this new HOP system, where they're going to be, it is in fact operational now, where people can get downtown and park in a remote location and get a shuttle downtown. And that it's encouraging to note that is being well used. And I think to the point CARTA is looking at other, I guess your model is probably one that they looked at.
Yeah, I mean, we really want to try to make, transportation easy for people, so we support Carter, and
Sure.
any of our care team members who use Carter to get to work, they ride for free, and we want to make sure people use public transit. We think public transit is an important part of the conversation, but the biggest piece of it is, again, until we can get housing more affordable, we got to find ways to incentivize the opportunity for people to be able to get to work on time, to deliver the value that we recruited them as talent into the organization. But people want to have a good quality of life. They want to live in a nice home. And nobody wants to live in poor quality housing or in a poor community. Everybody wants quality, and we can attain that in this region, but we have to have an intensive strategy supported by the business community, supported by our public officials that make that possible in our region.
I mean, we as employers, absolutely. Are there strategies that we can employ to help? Sure. We can create
You want to share those?
policies, benefits, telecommuting,
Oh, yeah,
low
all
country
of the
go,
above.
Yeah,
making,
yes.
ride share incentives. There are things we can do as employers to get into this and help. We need to pay market competitive rates. To your point, I think we're all committed to doing that, but the reality is we can't keep raising wages at the same pace that the housing costs have gone up,
Right.
or we'd all be out of business, and that won't work.
And
right? That won't
ultimately, we
work.
are all for profit. We all have financial goals. I know that just kind of anecdotally, the National Restaurant Association has done some studies, and on a nationwide basis, hospitality and culinary wages are going up. So we're not the only ones facing that, and the message that we've been getting out to our members is that they really have to be more. We don't have the ability. You can directly affect your compensation packages. We're one step removed, but we are trying to bring that message to our members. They're beginning to get that message as well. Well, this has been a really rich discussion. I guess in terms of a wrap-up, I'd kind of like to talk about what's the message that we send to our peers in the region. What are some of your thoughts, Melanie, that we give you to get this message out?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think the first thing is we all need to get educated,
Sure.
right? We need to understand the issue. We need to understand that all of these issues are intertwined. Attainable housing is intertwined with traffic mitigation, is intertwined with workforce, the ability to attract and retain top talent. It's all, and it impacts our business, it impacts our livability, so we need to get educated and we need to get involved.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great.
I think
Tom?
a second thing people should do, if you are an employer, you got to know how this issue impacts you. Talk to your employees about the affordability of housing for them. I'm pretty sure a lot of people already know.
Sure.
But knowing those stories and being able to share those stories about how the cost of housing is impacting your workforce and sharing that, particularly with your elected officials and your local leaders in your community, would be very helpful for them to understand not only the issue, but how the issue is impacting business is a really important point.
Great. Emily?
I think any business right now that might not be experiencing this issue needs to think about the future and sustainability. We're in a growing market, so this may not be their issue now,
Yet.
but it's right on the horizon because it will affect everyone. And I think if we can work collaboratively and come up with innovative approaches and communicate with and work with the different groups on the government side to help with this issue, we need to do that as a business community.
For sure. And I know that there may be a few who it hasn't affected. We've got so many new businesses coming in. Just speaking from the hospitality industry, you see how many hotels are coming up, and they're facing it. And then we all know all the development around the new plants and the peripheral organizations that are coming in here. They're going to be facing these. So this is for all the people who are about to come. It's going to be pretty evident.
Yeah, and that's why every business owner should get involved in the Chamber's efforts to address this issue. We have a great group working together. We're all involved and invested. And if you own a business, if you're an employer, if you're a leader in this community, you really should be involved in this effort. You should join the Chamber's efforts to make
No
sure that
question.
we make housing affordable and attainable for everyone in this region.
And this really is, I think, the appropriate organization, that it does touch, the whole region. You've got the employers, we certainly have relationships with our elected officials, so it really is, to your point, this really is the appropriate organization to do that. And I think we would all thank their efforts to do this, and it's a conscious effort on their part to make these changes. As we've all said, we want to make this a better place to live, work, and play. And so this is how it's done. So in terms of wrapping up, I want to thank Emily Reynolds from Heritage Trust, Melanie Zith from Roper, and of course Anton from MUSC. So thank you very much for your participation in this.